So, the Rings of Power Season 2 teaser trailer just dropped, and I don't know what to think. I have a complicated relationship with this show because, on one hand, there's all the criticism that this show isn't particularly faithful to the source material that it's based on. And having read most of Tolkien's extended works, I tend to agree. Sometimes it seems like they even go out of their way to make changes to the lore where it doesn't need changing. But on the other hand, I am in way too deep as a Tolkien fan at this point, and I will always love the opportunity to see his work put up on the big screen. And whether you agree with every single decision the showrunners made in season 1, there was some really cool stuff. After so many years of a Tolkien drought, I never thought that we'd be able to see someone like Finrod or even Valinor depicted on screen. And this show gave us that. But I am forever the optimist, and I'm actually excited to get this first glimpse of season 2. But before I watch the trailer, I want to talk about a few things that I would like to see. And I'm going to give a huge spoiler warning during this section of the video because I'm going to talk about what should happen chronologically in this show based on the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, and the recent novel, The Fall of Numenor. So if you want to avoid spoilers, go ahead and skip to this timestamp to see the trailer reaction. Okay, are you gone? Have you clicked off? Great. I think one of the first things that we'll see in season 2, and probably this trailer, is the creation of the One Ring. This is said to have happened just as the 3 Elven rings were created, so I imagine that this is something that we could see in episode 1. I also think one quick shot of the ring could be a really cool last shot of the trailer, but who knows if Amazon agrees with me there. And within the text, as soon as Sauron creates the One Ring, the elves that are wearing the original 3 start to feel his presence, so they take theirs off as a response. And because of this, Sauron is filled with rage, and he ends up making open war against Eregion. I think this will be the primary conflict of season 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if in this trailer we get some narration that's like, "We feel his presence. War is coming." But in any event, if we get an epic battle between the newly established forces of Mordor and the elves, count me in. If it lives up to just a portion of the battle we saw in the first stage prologue of season 1's first episode, I think fans will be extremely happy. We didn't quite get that full-scale battle toward the end of season 1, so this is their chance to make it up for the fans. If you know the lore here, you know that Eregion will be destroyed as a result of this battle, and the dwarves will shut their doors to Khazad-dûm as a result. They'll also likely get their own rings of power this season, so I imagine this is when we're going to see the greed of the dwarves start to grow exponentially. But back to the elves. In this season, I reckon toward the end, I think we'll see Elrond leave Eregion after its fall and establish Rivendell, which will be cool to see how this show handles an iconic location that was in the original film trilogy. In my opinion, Elrond was one of the best parts of season 1, so I have really high hopes for his arc in season 2. As for the other rings of power for the race of men, I'm thinking that we're going to see those created this season as well. I wonder if they'll disguise Sauron this time around and give him his original alias as Anatar as he gives these rings to the dwarves and men. I feel like they can make up some ground with fans by doing this, because I know a lot of them were not happy with the way that Sauron was portrayed as some random guy named Halbrand, just to have a gotcha moment at the end of season 1. And I imagine since we spent so much time in the Southlands that one of those humans will get a ring of power. It's said in the books that during this time after the creation of the ring, that all men in the East and South were under Sauron's dominion. So I imagine that the Southlands storyline will twist very dark by the end of season 2. And speaking of men, I'd also love to see Angmar. If we see the origins of the Witch King, I think a lot of fans will be super happy. It's not a part of Tolkien's mythology that's described in a lot of detail, so the showrunner should have a lot of room to tell a new, interesting story here. If Sauron ends up giving out the rings early enough in season 2, maybe we could see the Kings of Men turn into ring wraiths, but I think that's something that they'll save for season 3. As for Numenor, I think, especially after the battle in the Southlands, I think we'll start to see the bond between elves and Numenor grow a little bit stronger. I believe Numenor will link up with Lindon at some point and they'll form an alliance against Sauron. I hope Queen Regent Muriel making this decision sparks some really in-depth political discussions between herself and Pharazôn, furthering the rift and ideals between them that leads to Numenor's downfall. And speaking of that, I do think toward the end of this new season that we could see Sauron taken as prisoner by the Númenóreans to set up season 3, but I also think this could be a little bit further down the line. And finally, as for the Harfoots, I hope we don't see a darn thing about them. They made their pilgrimage, please let them be. But we'll obviously see Nori traveling with the stranger, and they'll likely move into a land in the east that we haven't seen depicted on screen yet, and that's a land called Rhûn. It would make a lot of sense for this wizard to be one of the 2 blue wizards that we see depicted mostly in the Unfinished Tales, and if that's the case, I really hope we meet the other one there as well. But in all likelihood, knowing this show, this wizard's probably going to end up being Gandalf, and I will shed a single tear for all of the book nerds out there like myself. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen this season, and I imagine that some of what I just said will end up in the trailer. The only thing that I know for sure is that I can't wait to watch this thing any longer, so wish me luck, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, I'm into it. This time around, we get a full minute and 45 seconds for this teaser, which is much longer than the teaser we got for season 1. And we get to see Halbrand in his true form, as an elf. No beard, long hair, it just feels right. And we hear Galadriel saying, "I think he has been here among us all along." So I wonder if they'll come up with a scenario where this elf, presumably Anatar, which I called by the way, has been influencing the elves for much longer than we saw on screen last season. If they could retrofit Anatar's impact on the overall story, I think it would appease most fans. But I think for some it would still be too little too late. But I'm absolutely willing to give it a chance. We also get to see chaos befalling the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, and Durin the Fourth declares that an ancient and powerful evil has returned. So presumably Elrond tells him this after the series finale of season 1. We then later see a huge rock smashing one of the bridges in Khazad-dûm. I wonder if them digging too deep actually compromises the structure of their cave dwelling, because we also get a very quick shot of the king seemingly stuck between two boulders. But the most important shot for the dwarves is that we do see King Durin III receive his ring of power. So we get a lot of information about the dwarves here, and I think it could be a very dwarf-heavy season, but we also get a lot of information about the elves. One of the first shots that we see of them is Galadriel and Elrond actually taking up arms together with a few other elves that we haven't met yet, and I'm going to presume that one of these is Celeborn. I'm sure everyone remembers last season when the showrunners tried to fake us out by saying that Celeborn, Galadriel's husband, is dead, when he clearly is alive in Tolkien lore, and we even met him in the original film trilogy. So yeah, I hope they right that wrong during this season. And honestly, I'm just happy that we finally get to see Elrond fight. Later on in the trailer, he has his full armor set on with his helmet, and he can be seen charging into battle with other elves on horseback. And maybe it just appeals to my little kid brain, but there's something just so special about watching the elves fight. We also get to see a lot of Eregion, which further confirms my suspicions that the central conflict of season 2 will play out here. There's a really epic quick shot of fireballs hurling over the water toward Eregion, which definitely means that we're going to see Sauron wage open war against the elves this season. But before that in the trailer, we see Celebrimbor looking out ominously at what appears to be a figure walking through a mist or even some huge explosion. We later see him frantically drop other rings that he's made into a fire, which I think is super interesting because it gives the idea that he wants to get rid of the rings, and maybe he knows that Sauron holds power over the ring bearers. Then, flashing over to Lindon, we finally get to see the leaves of the golden trees start to regrow, which presumably means that the rings of power were successful in stopping the decay that plagued their lands. And lastly for the elves, we get to see Arondir, who was one of my favorite parts of season 1, alongside Isildur, who I honestly totally forgot was in the show. It seems like they're traveling together without anyone else, so I wonder if Arondir helps Isildur get home during the length of this season. I would love to see Arondir meet up with the other elves during this show, because I think he would contrast Elrond and Gil-galad in a really cool way. Moving to Numenor though, we see a bit more than I thought we would. We get to see Pharazôn pull his sword out in front of a great eagle, which is cool, I guess. Did he ride the eagle? Is it just there to make him look cooler? I don't know, but I guess we'll see. He appears to be compelled into battle though, which would align with what I talked about during my predictions, and could be very important toward the end of season 2. We don't get to see any of Queen Regent Miriel though, but I'm sure she'll have a major role throughout the season. We also get to see Elendil reaching out for something amongst a group of people, and that's pretty much it for Numenor. I reckon that they'll be deciding throughout most of this season whether they want to help Middle-earth survive the destruction of Sauron, having seen it firsthand at the end of season 1. And lastly, that leaves us with the other forces of Mordor that we see throughout the trailer. Yes, we see Halbrand, or hopefully Anatar, in his elven form, but we also see Adar, who has since been recast after Joseph Mawle exited the show after season 1. I think since the character's face is quite mangled anyway, it won't be much of an adjustment for the audience to get used to this new actor in season 2. We get to see a lot of orcs throughout the trailer, and we also get to see this random black goo that reminds me of the Venom symbiote, and the last shot of this trailer is of what presumably will be Sauron's fortress for this season. It's very reminiscent of the ice lair that Galadriel finds at the beginning of season 1, and we even see ice spring out from the fortress as it erects in the trailer. It's unclear if this will be the show's version of Barad-dûr or not, but we'll just have to wait and see. Oh wait, I just realized there weren't any hobbits in the trailer. They listened to me. We do get a really brief shot of the stranger though, off in some desert landscape. We know that he and Nori will be venturing east, and this makes sense given the descriptions of Rhûn, which we've heard from Tolkien. But that's it. And I dare say that they actually listened to the fans here. Season 1's storyline almost all felt made up, but I can already see the structure of this season taking shape, given what Tolkien wrote. It seems as though they're following his word a bit more closely this time around, and giving fans what they actually expected in Season 1. I love that we get to see Annatar the elf, that we'll see a big battle come for Eregion this season, and then we get to see the dwarves twisted by their own greed after receiving their rings. I think we're in for a fun ride here, and I'm really curious as to what the rest of the internet is going to say. I don't think there's a ton to be mad at here, but I'm sure people will find a way. As for me, I'm excited. I'm going to be at San Diego Comic-Con this year, and I really hope to see some more footage firsthand. This is the make or break season for this show, and I really hope they deliver. But what do you think? Is your faith restored from this trailer? Are you waiting to reserve judgment until the full season comes out? Or are you just going to say it's bad no matter what because you got burned on the first season? Please like this video and leave a comment telling me how you feel. All I can say is I hope everyone gives this show a second chance because Tolkien's work being in this world is a net positive and I want to see more of it. That's all for me today. I got up really early to watch this trailer and make this video, so I'm going to go take a nap.